Hi folks, so today we're going to be making some esters, and one of the many properties of esters is that it's a very aromatic, and when I say aromatic I mean that it's very pungent in odor. So today we're going to be making very odorous compounds, and before we get too much into it, we're going to talk about the setup. So what I have here is a retort stand with a ring clamp that's hooked up to a 600 milliliter beaker filled with tap water. So I'm allowing this to boil for a couple of minutes, and afterwards I'll be able to get things rolling. The reason why we have this particular arrangement, especially with the ring clamp, is that at any point during the lab, I do not want to get burnt by accidentally brushing over my beaker, because accidents do happen and we want to ensure that you guys are safe while doing this lab. So before you start the whole heating process, make sure that you've included the ring clamp and the retort stand, and then afterwards you can turn on your heat source and then put your cold or lukewarm water inside the beaker, and then you can put the beaker inside the ring clamp and it should fit nice and snug. It's important to note that this demonstration will only cover one of the test tubes. So I chose arbitrarily the first test tube where we're going to react salicylic acid, and we're going to be reacting it with some methanol as well. But just note that the procedure is the same for the rest of the test tubes, but once again for the demonstration I'm only covering one. When your beaker full of water starts to boil, what you want to do next is shut off the heat source, and hopefully during the heating process you would have taken at least 3 of your test tubes and placed labels on them. So you could do 1, 2, 3, A, B, C. It's up to you as long as there's some particular kind of order, because we will be using different chemicals in each of these test tubes. Okay, after I added 0.2 grams of our salicylic acid into our first test tube, I will notice that, actually speaking of which, this looks like my water is starting to boil, so I'm going to shut her off. And my next step, using a dropper, I will be adding 10 drops of methanol into this test tube. After which, I'm going to head to the fume hood where I will be dealing with concentrated sulfuric acid. Now, in terms of safety, you have to remember that this is very concentrated stuff, and as a result, this could actually burn your hands like there's no tomorrow. So one way around not getting burnt is using our nitro gloves. So make sure when you're bringing your test tube rack, and as well as with your test tubes, when you're bringing it to your fume hood, make sure that you're using your gloves and you're using the appropriate eyedropper as well. Now keep in mind, you don't need 10 drops. The only thing you need is just mere 5 drops and you're good to go. But lastly, make sure you're adding 5 drops to each test tube. So I'm not going to do it to every single test tube, mostly because for the demonstration I'm only going to be doing 1. Now that I visit the fume hood and use my 5 drops of sulfuric acid in each of the test tubes, I can dispose my gloves, throw it right in the garbage, and I'm good to go. So from here on in, we have to place each of our test tubes right into the water bath. Now to safely do this, it would be to use a test tube clamp. So you're holding it as such, and you'll place it inside the test tube full of water. Now make sure you're angling it away from all of your partners, and especially nearby partners as well. Mostly because if anything spits out, which it shouldn't, but if it does, you won't be hitting your neighbors. After heating your reaction for about 5 minutes, you can safely take out your test tube, and using a petri dish filled with cold water, you're going to pour it slightly onto the petri dish. Okay. Put it back onto our test tube, and of course not back on to our beaker full of water like I just almost did. So now that we have our ester inside, what you can do is try to detect a very pleasant or it could be unpleasant odor. But of course you have to do it safely using the whole wafting technique. So I'll provide an example. Ooh, that smells good actually. Wow, that turned out a lot better than I thought. So now that you have your aroma, the one that you've been probably looking for, you're going to be recording your observations. And afterwards, you want to be cleaning up your desk, but pay special attention and care to your hot plate, which is still pretty hot. So follow your teacher's instructions on your disposal, and you'll be good to go and work on the rest of the lab.